of what our notebooks look like when we do this. This is just history. And these are all the lessons in history for the 6 to 9-year-olds. So, so you're going from what she had with the clock. Now you're measuring the day with the 24 hours. And so you're having to go through day and night, 12 and 12. So, you have to study that. And then the months of the year and labels, measurement of the year again, the year and its parts, that's seasons again. So we get the globes out, we get the light to go in the dark bathroom. We show how when it's sunny in California, it's dark in Asia. It's nighttime there. So then they get the experience of that. And then history, we go into the age of the earth and the age of the universe. And it's the first experience that they have with the timeline. Now their timeline chart is different from mine. Their timeline chart is very simple. It starts with the same thing. I'll cross the top here with the different ages and the beginning of time, but it doesn't have any of these plants. This was the 9 to 12-year-old level. We add the evolution of the plants. So that they see that, as the lines go up and down again, the trilobites, they rose to great numbers and then died out. And we see why they died out. There was an ice age. We see that there were other things that rose up, and this means the height of their evolution, and died out at the same time. And you can see that other things were starting, but continued to move on. Revolution. And all they do in the 6 to 9-year-old class is they put these little guys, these little shapes that they have on laminated cards, in the spot, matching it to their timelines. They're looking in this, and they do this over and over and over again. So when they come in here, they know this. And so then they just see that also moving along here was the evolution of plants. The plants started out in the oceans, and then maybe the oceans died back, and the plants had to try to find water, and they got roots, and then they had to live on the land, and they had to live against the weather conditions, so they got stronger. So then we have trees, and we have different kinds of plants and trees, we have different kinds of animals than we had before. So then we go into the classification of the living world in science. So they see that there's 5 kingdoms, and we study those 5 kingdoms first, and from there we go into the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the kingdom of the fungus, and within that we go to monocots, dicots, seed plants, non-vascular plants, vascular plants, and then into invertebrates, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, following the same order as before. Right now we're at insects, we just finished. The children in my class say, oh yes, Diptera. Those are the flies and the mosquitoes, because we sit and we study a unit on it. And now they're down to the scientific names. So the 6-year-old studies living and non-living, but with plants and experiencing plants and animals with the timeline, we're actually getting into more detail. In every subject area, as they get older, they go into more detail. So this is science, and then they, along with living and non-living, we study electricity and magnetism. We study the physical sciences and chemistry, and every once in a while we focus on a scientist who was just a discoverer. We say, when you grow up, maybe you're going to discover what that is. How to get across the universe without using fuel, that type of thing. And so a lot of things with magnetics and electromagnetics, so that they get that. These shelves, this 9 to 12-year-old level, these shelves are their resources. This is all science right here, and then this is history, that's history, and then we have all the National Geographics pulling out articles on science. We have 2 sets of encyclopedias, so they can look it up. We have 3 computers that have the different Comptons, Britannica, and National Geographic on disk, so they can look it up. All the dictionaries and thesaurus and things like that for looking up names of things. Then in geography, you see the same maps again, all the way through. You see them in that classroom too. They're still working with the maps, the puzzle maps. Now they're just really good at it. They just draw them up really fast. The teacher in the primary may have to hold these because they can't really get them them on there? Africa's, got too many countries. Now these guys relish the fact that they can do it. So we take a continent just like before. We take a continent all the way through, and I chose North America as well. But right now we're studying Africa. So in Africa, we're going to make the map. We put the countries in the capitals. That's the 9-year-old. The 10-year-old will probably take a country and put in all the major cities, major railroads, major waterways. The 12-year-old will research customs, culture, and monetary units. So that's what we do each month, one continent. Right now we're doing Africa. I'll show you North America here in just the same sequence. So you find your place in the world. You a paper map for an extension of this. Then there's all the waterways, and it's very easy for them. They usually do 2 or 3 of these for geography, and that is 1 day a week for us. Here's all the countries, capitals, major cities, land, and mountains. Then, we take the country, our country. They can take Mexico. They can do all the counties of Mexico, ciudades, and then we do the resources. Along with that, we have books that we get. We have actual units that they have to work on for each continent. And this is a great app. If you want to get one for your students, it's got all the different resources within the book. So you can see they have physical maps as well as political maps and the actual colors. So they can see deserts and green areas and which countries are in that. When we studied Asia, we studied Iraq and Iran, and the older children had a debate about the Muslims and the Jews and the Christians. And we have Muslims, Jews, and Christians in the classroom. And we said, okay, now the Muslims are going to take the Jewish side, and the Christians are going to take the Muslim side, and the Jews are going to take the Christian side. And so you have to stick up for your side now. And so then they all believed in the same thing. They all believed in Abraham as the founder, and they all believe in Allah, or God. And so we saw the similarities that way. So there was no argument. Yeah. It was a good debate. Yeah. This is the one everyone wants to use in the classroom. And then, we do the food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and defense again, but also the spiritual needs of man. Man has a need for art and music and dance, and within that, we've got it over here. Within that, the culture, there's sports. It's where they focus their interest in. Every country has these. Every person or every continent has some form of it. And then we have vanity, and that's a very important one for the children to understand, because the concept of the ego is something we want them to go into junior high school knowing that even though that person drives up in a limousine and steps out in a big, tuxedo and goes down the red carpet, how is he different than you? Well, they say, because he's famous, he has money, he's got everybody after. How is he different from you? Not because take away all that money and the car and all that, he's the same person. So it doesn't mean anything. And the person that's right next to you, may wear the same clothes every single day, but they are not different from you. Your choice in life is to make yourself realize that everyone is the same, and your job in this world is to keep that going. That everyone should be treated fairly and the same. Then they understand, love thy neighbor as thyself. Because you can't preach it, you have to experience it. So, the timeline over here is history. We first start out with, this is the timeline of man. So now they're going to go into prehistory and caveman. And they have the fundamental needs there. And, of course, they need fire. They need shelter, the cave. And we talk about that. And they put it along the timeline. So then they get the concept of all these centuries. Each one of these little blocks is a century. And they place these cards, and they see civilization really gets heavy, from the Middle Ages on. And from there, we do the units on the Middle Ages. Now, I did the Middle Ages last year, and so I do 3-year cycles of everything. So last year I did Egyptians, Greeks, Middle Ages, and the Renaissance. So this year I'm doing the Mayans, we're right over here, basic world cultures, and in there we had the Incans and the Aztecs. Then we moved on to explorers, because some of the beginning explorers were the ones that got rid of the Incans and the Mayans. And then we're going to go into a new nation is born. So this will be the first time some of them will talk about, the Americas and how we came into a new nation. And the older children then will go into the legislative body of our government and before they go into middle school. And then next year, we'll study a whole other group of, along that same timeline. So in a 3-year cycle, they're getting different civilizations. We start with the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians. It just depends on if I can get the right resource material to follow through. Because some of them have already gone into it in that classroom too. So art, like I said, we color, we draw, we still, we make masks for Africa, for Asia. We were making kites. We did the Chinese New Year. That was Asia last month. We did the customs and culture. They've made the adobe over there for the Mayans, right down here. Every one of them made one. Two of them just stayed here. And we have art every Friday, so they can express themselves any way that they want. We usually have a group project, and one of the older children chooses the project for everybody, and we get the materials, and they teach it to them. So you see a salt painting up there. Somebody else did, roller coaster with crazy eights, and they actually used compasses. And the Chinese New Year, someone brought in a color wheel, and we did the kites, of course, but that's just one of the little ones. Yeah, and it's more. They run the program in here as far as starting to become leaders. So they'll run circle. And they'll, ask the questions, and they take the role, and they prepare the snack, and they're the one responsible for making sure everybody does their job, and they have to do it nicely, and it has to be done diplomatically, or they won't do it again, because everyone makes them feel bad. And so it's their responsibility to take care of the classroom. We're here as a dynamic link still, the materials to them. On mathematics, I do on Monday. On Tuesday, I do language. Wednesday, geography. Thursday, science. And Friday, history. They have the whole day, the whole sense of the day for that subject area. They're not choosing anymore because they won't. Primary, they want to absorb everything in their environment. In elementary, we found that that wanting to do something, that sponge is not happening anymore. Now they just want to be with their peers and their pals and in the herd and work in a group. So we give them work, and we expect them to do it. But it's not lecturing; it's not the classroom.
So can you tell me an example of the circle time that they would bring to?
They start with the roll. The person who's running it will start with roll, and then they'll say, does anyone have physical sharing? And that means something that they've brought in from home, and they can bring it in any time. We've only got 11 in here. And so they bring in something that person has to tell about it. They have an open forum for questions about it, and then they move on through that. And it says nonverbal sharing, which means an experience or something like that. Okay, and then problems.